The desert stretched endlessly before Ryan. Golden sand dunes rose and fell like waves frozen in time. The sky above was a pale white, washed out by the burning sun that gave no mercy. The heat pressed on his shoulders like a heavy weight, and every step felt slower than the one before. His boots sank into the sand, and the sound of his own breathing was the only rhythm he could follow. Ryan was a human, stranded on this harsh alien world. He had been separated from his team many days ago when a sandstorm swallowed their camp. The storm carried away supplies, vehicles, and perhaps even lives. Ryan never saw the others again. Since then, survival had been a test every single hour. His lips were dry and cracked, his skin burned under the endless sun, and his body felt weak from hunger and thirst. He carried one canteen tied to his belt. It had been his most precious possession for days. Now it was almost empty. The small rattle of the water inside was both a comfort and a torment. He knew there was only a drop or two left. Every time he thought of drinking it, he stopped himself. If he drank too soon, he would die with nothing left. If he waited too long, he would die of thirst before he could find safety. The decision weighed on him like an invisible chain. The desert showed no kindness. The horizon promised only more sand. During the day the sun burned. At night the cold winds cut into his bones. Strange shadows sometimes moved at the edge of his vision, but whenever he turned to look, nothing was there. This world was not meant for humans. It belonged to something else. On this particular day, Ryan walked slower than usual. His legs shook and his throat ached. He felt as if every part of his body begged him to lie down and let the sand cover him. But deep inside, something stronger pushed him forward. He thought of home, of the blue oceans of Earth, of green forests and the sound of rivers. He told himself he would not die here. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence. It was faint, like a small cry carried by the wind. Ryan stopped and listened carefully. The sound came again, weak but clear. It was not the howl of wind or the hiss of shifting sand. It was a voice. A child's voice. Ryan's heart began to race. He turned his head and tried to locate the sound. His eyes scanned the dunes, and then he heard it once more, right below him. Without thinking, he dropped to his knees and began digging into the sand with his bare hands. The hot grains burned his skin, but he did not stop. The cries grew louder as he dug deeper, until his fingers struck something soft. He cleared the sand away and revealed a small alien child. The creature's skin was pale and smooth, with a faint shimmer as if tiny crystals lived beneath the surface. Its eyes were large and closed tight, its chest rising and falling in weak breaths. The child looked fragile, as though the desert had stolen all strength from its small body. Ryan hesitated for only a moment. This was no human child. He did not know if it was dangerous or harmless. But then he saw the way its lips were dry, its skin cracked by thirst. He recognized the same suffering he carried within himself. His hand moved to his belt. He pulled free the canteen. The sound of water inside seemed louder now, reminding him of how little remained. His mind filled with doubt. This was his last drop. If he gave it away, he might never survive long enough to find help. His throat burned with thirst, begging him to save it for himself. But the child let out another weak cry. Ryan looked at it and saw not an alien, but a small life clinging to survival. He thought of all the children on Earth, running free in the streets, laughing without fear. Could he walk away now, knowing he had the power to save this one? He opened the canteen. The last drop of water trembled at the edge of the container. With careful hands, he tilted it to the child's lips. The droplet touched its mouth, and for a moment nothing happened. Then the child stirred, its eyes opening slightly. The eyes were unlike anything Ryan had ever seen, glowing with soft light, like gems reflecting the sun. Slowly, its breathing grew steadier. Relief washed over Ryan, though his own throat cried louder for water. He had given away his last hope, yet he felt lighter than before. He gently lifted the child into his arms, brushing sand from its body. The alien child looked at him with wide eyes, filled with something he could only understand as gratitude. Ryan stood with the child in his arms and looked around the endless desert. The sun still burned, the dunes still stretched to the horizon, and his body was weaker than ever. Yet, somehow, he did not feel alone anymore. As he took his first step forward, shadows moved across the sand. Large figures approached in the distance, moving fast. Ryan narrowed his eyes and adjusted his grip on the child. Whoever they were coming straight for him. He tightened his stance, prepared for whatever came next. He had saved the child. Now he would face the consequence. The shadows moved faster now. Ryan could see them clearly against the sunlit dunes. They were tall, towering figures with sharp shapes that did not resemble humans. Their movements were precise, coordinated, and silent for creatures so large. Ryan's heart raced, but he held the child close, careful not to drop it. He could hear the child stirring in his arms, weak but alive. Its eyes followed the approaching figures with curiosity rather than fear. Ryan did not recognize the language the creatures spoke. It was a series of clicks, hums, and low tones that vibrated through the sand. Even without understanding, he sensed their power. These were no ordinary aliens. Ryan tried to back away slowly, hoping the figures would not notice him. The sand under his boots shifted with each step, betraying his presence. One of the figures raised a hand, and the others froze instantly. The movement was a signal. Their attention locked on him, and Ryan realized hiding was no longer an option. From the middle of the group emerged a massive creature, taller than the others, with a crown-like structure on its head. Its presence commanded respect. Ryan's breath caught. This had to be their leader, their queen. She stepped forward with careful grace, her body moving as if every motion was deliberate, controlled, and elegant. The smaller figures fell back slightly, giving her space. She stopped a few meters from Ryan. Her eyes, like two polished stones, fixed on the child in his arms. The child stirred and opened its mouth in a small cry. The queen bent slightly, tilting her head as if trying to understand what had happened. Ryan's voice was dry, cracked, and weak. He raised his hand slowly, showing he carried nothing dangerous. "I found it under the sand," he said in a calm tone, though his mind raced. "It was dying. I had no choice." The queen clicked her tongue sharply. Her guards moved closer, surrounding Ryan. Their presence was intimidating, yet he did not release the child. He could see her examining him carefully. Every detail was noted: the sunburned skin, the torn clothes, the dry canteen hanging at his belt. His last drop of water had gone to the child. The queen's tone changed, becoming softer, almost musical. She spoke a few words in her language, and the child responded with a soft hum. Ryan realized they were communicating in a way humans could not fully understand. Yet, he could feel the gratitude and surprise in her voice. One of the guards stepped forward and clicked loudly. The queen raised her hand, and the guard froze. Then she turned her gaze to Ryan again. She did not move closer, but the space between them seemed charged with power. Ryan could sense the weight of her presence pressing on him. "I gave it water," Ryan said, raising his voice slightly to be understood. "I had only one drop left. I could have kept it for myself. But it needed life more than I did." The Queen's eyes widened slightly. Her chest moved in slow, deep breaths, and she leaned forward to look at the child again. The child blinked and reached out toward her, its small hand trembling. Ryan could see her shoulders relax slightly. One of the guards made a noise, a sharp click, and the Queen responded with a low hum that seemed to command silence. She then took a step closer, her eyes fixed on Ryan. He noticed something in her gaze, a mixture of surprise, curiosity, and respect. She spoke again, slower this time, as if choosing words carefully. Her voice was deep but gentle, and Ryan understood the meaning without knowing the language. She was asking why a human would give away their last chance to survive. Ryan straightened his back. "No life should be wasted," he said simply. "Not even one small life. I cannot watch a child die when I can help." The Queen studied him for a long moment. Her guards remained still, watching both of them carefully. Then she bent slightly, lowering her head in a gesture that Ryan could only interpret as acknowledgement. It was a silent agreement that what he had done was brave. Suddenly, the child made a soft noise and nuzzled against Ryan. The Queen's eyes followed the movement, and she clicked softly. The child's strength seemed to return slightly, as if the Queen's presence gave it comfort. Ryan felt a mix of relief and tension. He had no idea what would happen next. The Queen took a few steps back and raised a hand again. The guards froze in place. Then she spoke in a stronger tone. Ryan could feel the vibrations in the sand. Whatever she said carried weight, authority, and finality. One of the guards approached cautiously, stopping a few meters away. They examined the canteen at Ryan's belt and the child in his arms. The Queen's gaze never left him. Ryan realized that saving the child had created a bond, one that humans did not fully understand. In this alien culture, saving royal blood carried meaning beyond words. The Queen clicked her tongue and leaned down closer to the child. The child responded, hums vibrating from its chest. Ryan could feel their connection, and he realized he was witnessing something rare. The Queen was acknowledging the life he had saved and the courage he had shown. He tried to keep his voice calm. "I do not want anything from you," he said. "I only want to survive. Please do not harm me or the child." The Queen straightened again and raised her arm slightly, a gesture that seemed to calm her guards. She studied Ryan's face, looking into his eyes as if testing him. She was not angry. She was not hostile. She was curious, and there was respect in that curiosity. The sun moved across the sky, casting shadows over the dunes. Ryan felt the heat on his back, but the tension between him and the Queen remained. He did not know what she would decide. Every instinct told him to prepare for the worst, yet something in her eyes reassured him. Finally, she stepped back and clicked softly. The guards moved with her, forming a protective circle around Ryan and the child. The Queen did not speak again, but her gaze lingered. Ryan understood that he had been given a moment of reprieve. His last drop of water had saved the child, and now he had gained the attention of a powerful being. Ryan looked down at the child, whose breathing was steady now. He smiled faintly, feeling warmth in his chest. He had risked his own survival to save a life. In return, he had earned the notice of the Hive Queen. Whatever came next, he knew that this small act of courage had changed everything. The desert stretched around them, still harsh and endless, but Ryan no longer felt completely alone. He had the child, and he had the attention of the most powerful being on this world. His last drop of water had done more than sustain life, it had created a connection that could shape the future of both human and alien. Ryan adjusted the child in his arms and took a careful step forward, ready to face whatever the Hive Queen would demand. He had given the last drop of water, and in doing so, he had set in motion a chain of events that neither he nor the Queen could fully predict. The sand shifted beneath Ryan's feet as he stood with the small alien child in his arms. The desert sun glared overhead, but his attention was fully fixed on the massive figure before him. The Hive Queen had stepped closer, her towering form commanding the air around her. Each movement was deliberate, graceful, yet filled with undeniable authority. Ryan could feel the power in her presence. Her head was adorned with a crown-like crest that shimmered faintly under the sun, and her eyes, large and multifaceted, were focused entirely on the child. The guards who accompanied her were enormous, their limbs long and strong, each moving in perfect synchrony. Yet they did not make a threatening move. The Queen had simply observed, and her attention alone held absolute control over the group. Ryan's heart pounded, but he stood his ground. He did not want to show fear. He was a human, and even in this alien world, he had learned that courage could make a difference. The child stirred slightly in his arms, opening its eyes and looking toward the Queen. Its small voice, a soft hum, carried trust and curiosity. Ryan realized the Queen was not only interested in him but also in the life he had saved. The Queen tilted her head slightly, clicking her tongue softly. The sound was melodic but commanding. The guards responded instantly with low hums, their bodies straightening in perfect formation. The Queen's gaze returned to Ryan, intense and unyielding, as if she were reading the choices and intentions within his mind. Ryan spoke carefully. "I gave it water. It needed life more than I did. I could not let it die." His voice was quiet but steady. The heat from the sun made his throat scratchy, yet his words carried honesty. He knew honesty might be the only way to survive this encounter. The Hive Queen leaned down slightly, bringing her massive eyes level with the child. Her movements were slow, almost ceremonial. She extended a long arm, and her fingers hovered above the child, radiating a strange energy that Ryan could feel even without touching. The child's hum changed, soft and responsive, and it leaned slightly toward her. Ryan's heart skipped a beat. He realized that this child was indeed a royal member of the Hive species. The Queen's interest was personal. He had saved someone precious to her, and now he was part of something far bigger than he had ever imagined. The Queen clicked again, a sharper sound that echoed across the dunes. Her guards froze, awaiting her command. Ryan understood the meaning even without language. This was a question, an inquiry into why a human would risk so much to save another life. He met her gaze. "Because no life should be wasted. Not even one small life," he said, his voice gaining strength. "I do not know your ways, but I know suffering. I could not watch this child die when I could help." The Queen's eyes narrowed for a moment, then widened. Her head tilted slightly, an almost imperceptible gesture that conveyed acknowledgement. The guards shifted subtly but did not move forward. The Queen was making her decision, and every movement was precise, deliberate. Ryan's grip on the child tightened slightly, protective and careful. He could feel the tension in the air. This moment would determine whether he would survive, whether he would be allowed to leave, or whether he was now part of something much larger. Finally, the Queen straightened and made a low hum. She stepped closer, her massive frame towering above him. Ryan felt the sand tremble under her movement. She was speaking, though he could not understand the words. The vibrations carried a weight that resonated through his chest. The child responded instantly, hums filling the space between them. Ryan could see the subtle connection forming. The queen's eyes softened slightly, but there was still authority in her gaze. She was not only judging him but also acknowledging his act of courage. The queen made a sudden movement, extending her arm toward the sky. The guards followed, mirroring her motion with perfect precision. A soft wind rose around them, carrying tiny grains of sand across the dunes. Ryan realized this was a display, a ceremonial act of acknowledgement. It was not a threat. It was recognition. Ryan spoke again, his voice more confident. "I only wish to survive. I have no enemies here. I only saved this child because it needed help." His words hung in the air, small and human against the alien power surrounding him. The queen's eyes studied him, scanning every detail. Then she leaned down toward him, and for the first time, Ryan felt the true intensity of her gaze. It was not anger. It was not hostility. It was understanding, curiosity, and respect. The queen was measuring the value of his actions, the courage behind them, and perhaps the strength of his spirit. Then, the queen did something unexpected. She stepped even closer, bending her massive body so that her eyes were level with his. The child stirred again, reaching toward her. The queen's hand moved gently, almost reverently, toward the child. Ryan watched carefully. Her touch was not threatening. It was careful, controlled, and protective. Ryan felt a mix of relief and awe. He had faced dangerous creatures before, but never one like this. The queen's presence was overwhelming, yet she did not move with aggression. She moved with purpose. She had come not to punish or threaten, but to assess and acknowledge. The queen straightened slowly and clicked her tongue. The sound was firm, carrying authority that commanded attention. Her guards mirrored her stance, standing tall and unmoving. The queen's gaze returned to Ryan. It was a moment of decision. She was determining what would happen next. Ryan took a careful breath, still holding the child close. He felt the weight of the queen's attention on him. He had no weapons. He had no plan beyond survival. Yet he knew that his last drop of water had done more than save a life. It had captured the attention of the most powerful being on this desert world. The queen made a final gesture. She lowered her hand slightly, and the guards relaxed marginally. Her eyes remained fixed on Ryan. The child stirred in his arms, looking up at him, then at the queen. Ryan realized that this moment would shape what came next. He had crossed a threshold into the heart of the Hive, and nothing would be the same again. The desert sun continued to blaze down on them, the sand shifting with every subtle movement of the queen and her guards. Ryan stood quietly, feeling both small and significant. He had saved a life, and now he faced a decision that could change everything. The queen was powerful, and her acknowledgement meant that the simple act of giving water had become more than survival. It had become a bond, one that might determine the future of humans and Hive alike. Ryan adjusted the child in his arms and looked up at the queen. His choice was simple: he would protect the child, and he would meet whatever challenge came with courage. For in saving one small life, he had found himself standing in the presence of something far greater, a force that could shape the fate of worlds. The desert was silent except for the soft hums of the alien guards. Ryan stood with the small Hive child cradled in his arms, his heart still pounding from the encounter with the queen. He did not move, fearing that any sudden gesture could anger her or the guards. Yet he could feel that he was no longer just a stranger. He was part of something larger than himself. The queen remained before him, her towering figure casting a long shadow over the sand. Her eyes studied him, focused and unwavering. Ryan realized that in her gaze, he could sense both the weight of authority and a strange curiosity. She was measuring his courage, his heart, and perhaps the meaning behind his actions. Then, without warning, she made a sound that resonated across the dunes. It was a low hum, a commanding vibration that the guards answered immediately. They stepped back, forming a wider circle around Ryan and the child. The queen's gaze did not leave him. He sensed that she was making a decision that would affect both his life and the life of the child he had saved. Ryan's thoughts raced. He had only acted out of instinct, giving the last drop of water to save a life. He had not expected any reward or acknowledgement. Yet now, standing before the Hive Queen, he felt the magnitude of his choice. In this culture, he realized, saving the life of a royal carried a weight that he could barely comprehend. The queen's eyes softened slightly, though her authority did not waver. She stepped closer and tilted her head, studying him. Then she spoke, and though he could not understand her words, he could feel the meaning behind them. She was declaring that a debt had been created, a bond formed because he had saved the child. In Hive culture, the life of royalty was sacred, and saving it demanded repayment. Ryan's mind raced with questions. What did this mean for him? Would she demand something he could not give? Would he be forced to stay in this desert world forever? He tightened his grip on the child, protecting it from the uncertainty of what was to come. One of the guards stepped forward and extended a hand toward Ryan, a gesture that could have been threatening in another context. The queen clicked her tongue sharply, and the guard froze. Ryan understood that her command was absolute. Whatever she desired, the guards would carry out without question. The queen leaned closer to the child, her enormous eyes filled with a mixture of concern and curiosity. The child responded, humming softly, showing no fear of the towering figure before it. Ryan felt a sense of relief. He had feared that the child might be frightened, but it seemed to recognize the queen's presence as protective rather than dangerous. Then the queen's gaze returned to him, intense and unwavering. She tilted her head slightly, and Ryan felt as if she were speaking directly into his mind. Though the words were foreign, he understood the meaning. She was offering him a choice. He could leave this desert, safe and unharmed, but the bond between him and the Hive would remain. Alternatively, he could accept a greater responsibility, becoming part of their world and helping the Hive in ways he could not yet imagine. Ryan's thoughts shifted rapidly. Leaving was simple, safe, and familiar. Staying meant danger, uncertainty, and a life intertwined with beings he barely understood. Yet he could not ignore the life of the child he had saved. Its survival depended not only on the queen but also on him. He realized that in this moment, his choice would define not just his fate but the fate of the Hive's youngest member. He took a careful breath and spoke. "I only want the child to be safe," he said, his voice steady. "I do not seek reward, and I do not wish for harm. I only want to help if I can." The queen paused, her eyes narrowing slightly as if considering his words. Then she clicked her tongue, and the guards shifted subtly, acknowledging the decision she was about to make. The air felt charged, and Ryan sensed the importance of what was unfolding. The queen stepped back slightly, allowing him a moment to adjust. She lowered her head, bringing her eyes level with his. The child stirred in his arms, looking up at him, then at the queen. The queen extended a long arm, not to take the child, but to gesture toward him. Her posture was not aggressive. It was formal, deliberate, and commanding. Ryan understood. The Queen was granting him the opportunity to accept a role, a responsibility that went beyond survival. In saving the child, he had proven his courage and his heart. Now the Hive offered him a chance to continue that courage, to protect and serve in a way that only he could. He hesitated for a moment, weighing the choice. He had come from Earth, a world where humans survived by helping one another. He had learned that life was precious, that courage was measured not by strength alone but by the willingness to act when others could not. The Hive Queen had tested him, and he had passed. Now, the question was whether he would embrace this new path. Finally, he nodded slowly. "I will help," he said. "I will do what I can to protect the child and your people. I will not abandon them." The Queen's eyes widened slightly, and a low hum vibrated through the sand. The guards straightened instantly, acknowledging his decision. Ryan felt a sense of relief mixed with anticipation. He had accepted a role larger than himself, and the bond created by his act of courage had now shaped the course of his life. The Queen stepped back further, her towering presence still dominating the desert. She did not speak again, but her gaze lingered on him. Ryan understood that in Hive culture, actions carried more weight than words. By saving the child and accepting the responsibility offered, he had earned respect, trust, and a place in their world. The child stirred once more, looking up at him with wide eyes. Ryan smiled faintly, feeling a connection that went beyond species or language. He had saved a life, and in return, he had become part of something much larger. The desert around them, once a place of danger and isolation, now felt like a world full of possibilities. Ryan adjusted the child in his arms and looked at the Queen. Though she did not speak, he could feel her acknowledgement, her respect, and her expectation. He had accepted a debt of life, a responsibility that went beyond himself. The path ahead was uncertain, but he was ready to face it. The sun continued to blaze overhead, casting long shadows across the sand. The desert seemed less harsh now, less threatening. Ryan knew that challenges would come, that dangers would rise, and that he would be tested further. But he also knew that he had made a choice that defined him. In saving a single life, he had created a bond that could change the future of the Hive and of himself. He took a careful step forward, holding the child securely, and looked toward the endless dunes. The desert was still vast and unforgiving, but he no longer felt alone. He had a purpose, a connection, and a path to follow. The Hive Queen had shown him that courage and compassion could create opportunities beyond imagination. Now, it was his turn to honor that trust and face the journey ahead. Ryan held the small Hive child carefully in his arms. The desert stretched endlessly around them, but he no longer felt the emptiness that had once made the world seem cruel. The Hive Queen stood before him, her towering form commanding the air. Her eyes, large and bright, studied him intently. Every movement was precise and deliberate, a mixture of power and elegance. Ryan had expected the Queen to send him away after he accepted the responsibility to protect the child. Instead, she made no move to release him. Her gaze was fixed, and her posture indicated that she intended to speak, though he could not yet understand her words. The guards remained perfectly still, surrounding them, a silent but formidable presence. The child shifted slightly in his arms, looking up at the Queen. Ryan noticed a subtle change in its behavior. The child's hums grew stronger, more confident, as if it recognized that this towering figure was a protector and not a threat. Ryan felt a small sense of relief. The child's life, which he had saved with his last drop of water, seemed to be stabilizing under the queen's watchful eyes. The queen moved closer, her shadow falling over him and the child. She raised a long arm, pointing toward the horizon. The gesture was formal, deliberate, and Ryan understood it as an invitation. He stepped forward carefully, holding the child securely. Every movement was cautious, but he could feel a strange connection forming between them, one that transcended species or language. Then the queen spoke, her voice deep and resonant. Ryan could not understand the words, yet the tone carried meaning. She was not angry, not demanding, but conveying something important. Her eyes searched his, measuring, testing, assessing his reaction. It was clear that she wished to communicate her request, though he would need to respond in action rather than words. Ryan looked down at the child and then back at the queen. He knew instinctively that whatever she asked would not be trivial. The Hive were a proud species, and the child he had saved was a part of their royal line. The queen's request, whatever it might be, would carry consequences far beyond the desert. The queen extended a hand toward him, palm open and steady. The guards moved slightly but remained at a respectful distance. Ryan understood that she was offering him a choice. This was not a threat. This was a request that required careful consideration. His mind raced. He had survived the desert, saved a life, and earned the respect of a powerful alien leader. Now he faced the unknown of her expectations. He held the child closer and spoke softly, though he doubted she could understand. "I will do whatever I can to help," he said. "I only want the child to be safe and your people to thrive." His words were sincere. Courage had brought him this far, but honesty might carry him further. The queen tilted her head slightly, and her eyes seemed to soften. She made a series of soft clicks, a melodic rhythm that resonated in the air. The child responded, humming in approval. Ryan realized that the queen was explaining her request to the child in a language he could not comprehend. Still, the meaning was clear. She wished him to help in a deeper, more personal way. One of the guards stepped forward, holding a small object that Ryan had never seen before. The queen gestured toward it, and Ryan understood that this was part of her request. He reached out cautiously, examining the item. It was small, delicate, and pulsed with energy. He could feel its significance, though he did not yet understand how it worked. The queen's eyes never left him. She clicked softly and then raised her hand, pointing toward the dunes beyond. The gesture was clear. She expected him to follow, to act in a way that would protect the child and serve the Hive. Ryan felt the weight of responsibility press on him, heavier than the desert sun. He took a careful step forward. The guards adjusted their positions but did not impede him. The child stirred, looking up at him with wide eyes, trusting him completely. Ryan felt a surge of determination. He had saved this life once with water. Now he would continue to protect it with every choice he made. The queen moved closer again, her presence overwhelming but not threatening. She lowered her head slightly, and Ryan could sense her expectations. The Hive had survived for centuries through strength, cooperation, and careful planning. She was offering him a chance to join in that survival, to contribute to the life of the child and the future of the Hive. Ryan nodded slowly. He could not fully understand the consequences of his actions, but he understood the importance. Courage and compassion had brought him here, and they would guide him now. He would follow the queen's request, whatever it entailed. The child shifted in his arms, humming softly, and Ryan felt a sense of connection stronger than anything he had experienced before. The queen's request was not a burden, it was an opportunity. Through his actions, he could ensure the child's safety, strengthen the hive, and perhaps find a new purpose for himself in this harsh desert world. The queen made a low, resonant hum, and the guards responded instantly, their movements fluid and synchronized. Ryan realized that this was a demonstration of trust. He had accepted her request, and in doing so, he had earned the support of the hive. The desert, once a place of isolation and danger, now felt like the beginning of a larger journey. Ryan adjusted the child in his arms and took another careful step forward. The queen's gaze followed him, unwavering and commanding. He knew that the challenges ahead would not be easy. He would need courage, patience, and understanding. But he also knew that he had already proven his heart. He had saved a life with a single drop of water. Now he would protect that life and honor the trust the queen had placed in him. The desert sun burned overhead, and the sand stretched endlessly in all directions. Yet Ryan felt a new determination. The queen's request had given him purpose. He would face the unknown with courage. He would protect the child. He would honor the bond formed by his actions. The hive had opened a door, and Ryan was ready to step through it, knowing that every step forward would shape the future of both human and alien. The desert wind whispered across the dunes as Ryan held the small hive child in his arms. The queen's towering form stood nearby, her guards surrounding them in perfect formation. The weight of what had been asked of him pressed on Ryan's mind. He had saved the child with his last drop of water, and now the hive queen had placed a choice before him. It was more than a decision for survival. It was a decision that could shape the life of the child and the future of the hive. Ryan looked down at the child. Its small eyes, bright and trusting, stared up at him. The hums that it made were soft and steady, as though it could sense the tension in the air. The child had survived the desert because of him. Its life was fragile, but it was alive. And that life depended, in part, on the choice he was about to make. The queen clicked her tongue softly, and Ryan felt the vibration in his chest. Though he could not understand her language, he understood the meaning. She was giving him the opportunity to make a choice. He could leave, survive, and return to the familiar world he knew. Or he could stay, take responsibility, and help the hive in ways he had not imagined. Both options carried risks, but only one honored the life he had saved. Ryan's mind turned over the possibilities. Leaving would mean safety, freedom, and return to Earth if he ever could. But leaving would also mean abandoning the child and the responsibility that came with saving it. He could not ignore the debt of life he had created. The queen's request was more than a simple command. It was a chance to do something meaningful beyond mere survival. He remembered the moment when he had given the last drop of water. The child had opened its eyes, weak but alive, and the glow of life had returned. That single act of courage had not only saved a life but had also changed the course of events. Now, the choice before him was similar. He could act out of fear, or he could act out of courage. Ryan looked up at the queen. Her gaze remained fixed on him, powerful and unwavering. There was no pressure in her expression, only expectation. She had observed his actions, tested his heart, and now awaited his decision. The desert sun beat down, yet the space between them felt charged with a quiet tension. Every step he took would carry consequence. He shifted the child slightly, feeling the warmth and fragility of its small body. The child's hums grew stronger, a sound that seemed to encourage him. He realized that the life he had saved depended on him not only to survive but to continue protecting it. Courage and compassion had guided him before, and they would guide him now. Ryan took a deep breath. He understood that the queen's request was not a simple favor or a temporary task. It was a commitment, a bond that could not be broken lightly. It was a chance to ensure the survival of the child and, perhaps, the future of the hive itself. He could not turn away. His decision was clear in his heart. "I will stay," he said, his voice steady and quiet. "I will protect the child, and I will help your people in any way I can. I will not abandon them." The queen's eyes widened slightly, and a low hum resonated through the sand. Her guards straightened immediately, acknowledging the decision with precise, synchronized movements. Ryan could feel the shift in the air. His choice had been accepted. He had stepped beyond survival into a role of responsibility, trust, and purpose. The child stirred in his arms, looking up at him with eyes full of trust. Ryan smiled faintly, feeling a sense of connection stronger than anything he had ever experienced. The bond formed by the act of giving water had grown into something larger. Now, it was reinforced by his decision to stay, to face whatever challenges lay ahead alongside the hive. The queen clicked her tongue softly, a melodic sound that seemed to convey approval. She moved closer, her towering form casting a long shadow over the dunes. The guards shifted their positions slightly, allowing space for Ryan to follow the queen's movements. Though he could not understand her words, he understood her intention. She was guiding him into the next step of his journey. Ryan adjusted the child in his arms, feeling the weight of responsibility settle more firmly on his shoulders. He would need courage, patience, and wisdom to navigate the challenges ahead. The desert was harsh, but the hive world, with its own customs and power, would be a greater test. Yet he felt ready. Courage had brought him this far, and now compassion and responsibility would carry him forward. The queen extended a long arm, and the guards stepped aside. The gesture was clear. Ryan was to follow. He took a careful step forward, holding the child close. Every movement was deliberate, cautious, yet filled with determination. He knew that leaving now was impossible, for he had chosen to embrace this path. The desert stretched endlessly around them, but Ryan no longer felt alone or powerless. He had saved a life, earned the respect of the Hive Queen, and accepted a role that would define the future. He understood that the child's survival and the trust of the Hive depended on him, and he felt a quiet strength growing within. As he walked, the child hummed softly, shifting its small head against his chest. The queen's eyes followed him, still observing, still commanding respect. The guards moved in harmony around them, creating a protective circle. Ryan realized that he had entered a world where actions spoke louder than words, and where courage and compassion could create bonds that transcended species. The desert sun began to dip slightly toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the dunes. The wind carried grains of sand in delicate patterns, as if guiding the path forward. Ryan felt a sense of clarity. He had made his choice, and he would honor it. He would protect the child, serve the hive, and face whatever challenges came with unwavering courage. The queen made a low, resonant hum, and Ryan understood it as acknowledgement. His decision was accepted, his commitment recognized. The desert, which had once been a place of fear and isolation, now felt like a world of possibility. The child in his arms, the queen before him, and the journey ahead formed a new path, one he was ready to walk with determination and courage. Ryan adjusted the child once more, holding it securely. He felt a deep sense of purpose. He had chosen not merely to survive but to act with courage, to honor the life he had saved, and to step into a role that could shape the future. The queen's presence was overwhelming, yet it was no longer intimidating. It was a reminder of the bond he had created and the responsibility he had embraced. With the Queen guiding them and the guards surrounding them, Ryan took another step forward into the endless desert. Every footstep was a commitment, a promise to protect, to serve, and to honor the trust placed in him. He had made the human choice, a choice of courage, compassion, and purpose. And in that choice, he had found the path to a new beginning, one that would shape the lives of humans and Hive alike. The desert wind shifted as Ryan walked beside the Hive Queen, holding the small child carefully in his arms. The sun was beginning to dip toward the horizon, painting the sand in golden and orange hues. The heat of the day had softened, but the desert remained vast and unforgiving. Yet Ryan felt a sense of hope he had not felt before. He was no longer alone, and he had a purpose beyond mere survival. The Hive Queen moved with her usual grace, towering and powerful, her eyes always fixed on him and the child. Her guards flanked them, moving in perfect formation. The child, once fragile and weak, now hummed softly in response to the Queen, a gentle vibration that seemed to show trust and growing strength. Ryan realized that his choice to stay and accept responsibility had not only saved a life but had also begun to shape the future of the Hive. He looked down at the child, small hands clutching his shirt, eyes bright with curiosity. The child's hums were steady and calm, a sign that life had returned in full measure. Ryan felt a warmth in his chest. Saving the child with his last drop of water had been the first step, but now his presence, his courage, and his willingness to stay had created a connection that went deeper than he could have imagined. The Queen clicked her tongue softly, and the guards shifted subtly, signaling a pause. Ryan understood this as a moment of observation. The Queen was studying him once more, assessing his spirit and determination. He had proven courage, compassion, and resolve. Now, she was acknowledging the new role he had accepted. Ryan took a careful breath. He had learned over the past days that survival was not only about strength or endurance. It was about understanding, action, and the willingness to make choices that mattered. He had chosen to save a life, to protect it, and now he had chosen to stay. That choice, he realized, was the beginning of something far greater than himself. The desert seemed less empty now. Every dune, every shifting grain of sand felt part of a larger world. Ryan walked steadily, adjusting the child in his arms to make it more comfortable. The child looked up at him occasionally, eyes filled with trust and recognition. He smiled faintly, feeling a bond stronger than anything he had experienced before. The Hive Queen paused and made a series of melodic clicks. The guards responded instantly, their movements fluid and synchronized. Ryan could feel the meaning behind the sounds. She was offering him guidance and acknowledgement, showing him the next steps in this journey he had chosen. The Queen's presence, once overwhelming, now felt like support and direction. Ryan knew that challenges would come. The desert was harsh, the Hive world was complex, and he was still a human among beings far stronger and older than his species. Yet he felt prepared. Courage had guided him to save the child, compassion had guided him to stay, and now responsibility would guide him into the future. He took another step, scanning the horizon. The sand stretched endlessly, yet there was a strange beauty in its vastness. The child stirred gently, humming softly, and Ryan realized that his actions were giving it life and confidence. The Queen's request had become a shared journey, and he felt the weight of trust more than the weight of fear. The Queen stepped closer to him, lowering her head slightly, and Ryan understood her gesture as acceptance and recognition. She did not need words. Her actions, her presence, and the subtle clicks carried meaning stronger than speech. Ryan felt a sense of belonging he had never experienced. He was part of the Hive now, in a role defined by courage, compassion, and choice. He thought of Earth, of the life he had left behind. He remembered the blue oceans, green forests, and the sounds of rivers and laughter. That world seemed distant, almost unreal compared to the harsh desert he now walked. Yet he realized that the spirit of humanity, the courage to act, the compassion to care, and the willingness to accept responsibility had brought him here and would continue to guide him. The child's hums grew louder, more confident, and Ryan felt a surge of determination. Every choice he had made, every step he had taken, had led to this moment. The bond with the child was now unbreakable. His actions had created trust, and that trust would guide both of them into a new future. The queen clicked again, and Ryan noticed a subtle shift in her stance. She moved slightly forward, gesturing toward the distant dunes. Ryan understood this as an invitation. The next part of their journey lay ahead, filled with unknowns, yet filled with purpose. He took a step forward, holding the child securely, ready to face whatever came next. The desert wind rose slightly, carrying grains of sand in delicate patterns across the dunes. Ryan felt the rhythm of the world around him. Each movement of the queen, the guards, and even the child's soft hum seemed to align with his own heartbeat. He realized that his life, once isolated and uncertain, was now intertwined with beings far stronger and wiser than himself. Ryan smiled faintly, feeling a quiet strength. Courage had led him to save a life. Compassion had led him to stay. Responsibility now guided him toward a future where he could make a real difference. He understood that the path ahead would not be easy, yet every step forward was a choice to honor the bond he had created. The sun continued to dip lower, casting long shadows across the desert. The light was softer now, golden and warm. Ryan looked down at the child, whose eyes sparkled in the fading sunlight. The child reached up, touching his face gently, and he felt a surge of hope. The life he had saved was growing stronger, and he was part of that growth. The queen clicked softly, a sound that seemed like approval and encouragement. Ryan took another step, holding the child close. The guards moved fluidly beside them, their presence a quiet assurance of safety and guidance. The desert, once a place of danger and loneliness, now felt like the beginning of something new. Ryan understood that his actions had changed everything. One small act of courage had created a bond. One choice to stay had shaped a future. And now, in the fading light of the desert sun, he realized that this was only the beginning. He had a purpose, a connection, and a path forward that would define not only his life but the life of the child and the future of the Hive. He took a careful breath, feeling the warmth of the child in his arms. The queen moved beside him, her towering form both powerful and comforting. Ryan knew that challenges would come, that danger and uncertainty would test him. Yet he felt ready. Courage, compassion, and responsibility would guide him forward. The desert stretched endlessly around them, yet Ryan no longer felt small or insignificant. He had found meaning, purpose, and a bond stronger than fear. He had become part of a larger world, one where his choices could create life, safety, and trust. With each step, he embraced his new beginning. The child hummed softly, and Ryan smiled. The queen watched silently, acknowledging his decision, his courage, and his role. The desert wind carried them forward, and for the first time since he had arrived, Ryan felt hope, strength, and belonging. The new beginning had come, and he was ready to walk its path with the courage and heart that had brought him this far.